Jacob's Saga, a story of a man marked by cunning, relentless struggle, and surprising divine mercy, begins amidst shadows. Imagine yourself in the womb, hearing two vibrant voices, the struggle of two brothers even before birth. Isaac, the father, yearns for the blessing promised to Abraham, a lineage that would bless the nations. Rebekah, the mother, feels in her heart the weight of a promise that becomes a burden. Would the younger son, Jacob, carry the spiritual inheritance destined for the firstborn Esau? This is the story of a man who deceived, suffered, struggled, and ultimately found peace in unexpected grace. The faith that moves mountains, the perseverance that withstands life's storms. Join us on this journey and discover how God's faithfulness manifests itself even in the midst of our greatest failures. Subscribe to our channel to not miss any episode of this exciting saga. Jacob's cunning, perhaps inherited from human nature itself, led him to deceive his brother Esau, stealing his birthright. A spiritual and earthly blessing, a birthright that guaranteed a privileged position in the family and inheritance. The Bible shows us human frailty, the crooked paths we take, the decisions that haunt us for years. This story confronts us with the reality of our choices and their consequences, reminding us of the need for a God who forgives and restores. But the question that remains is, what was the price of that cunning? Would Jacob become a successful, prosperous man, or would the lie plant a seed of suffering in his future? Leave your comment, sharing your thoughts on the first part of the story, and join our community accessing the link in the description. Jacob's flight to his uncle Laban's house in Mesopotamia marks the beginning of a new chapter full of challenges. He finds love in Rachel, Laban's youngest daughter, but the journey's not easy, marked by manipulation, deception, and hard work. Jacob serves 7 years for Rachel, but is deceived by Laban, who forces him to marry Leah, the eldest daughter. This situation reminds us of man's frailty, our vulnerability in the face of adverse circumstances. The question that arises here is, how does God act in moments when injustice prevails? Will he abandon Jacob to his fate, or is there a greater plan in action? Join our journey and immerse yourself in this saga of faith, suffering, and hope. Share this video with your friends and let's reflect together on this incredible story. The romantic disappointment and Laban's manipulation didn't stop there. Jacob, forced to serve another 7 years to marry Rachel, faces the harsh reality of a man deceived, used, and exploited. The biblical narrative does not romanticize pain. It faithfully describes Jacob's suffering, the weight of betrayal and anguish. Here, we do not find a flawless hero, but an ordinary man, with his mistakes and failures, fighting for survival and the fulfillment of his dreams. How did this experience of suffering shape Jacob's character? What lessons can we learn from his perseverance even in the face of adversity? The answer is in the next part. Subscribe and activate the bell so you don't miss anything. Despite years of hard work and the difficulties imposed by Laban, Jacob begins to prosper. God blesses him, multiplying his flocks and his material wealth. However, this prosperity does not come without new conflicts. Laban's envy and greed create even more tension and challenges. Jacob, cunning as ever, uses his intelligence to overcome these obstacles, showing his ability to adapt and strategize. But this prosperity achieved through cunning, does it represent the true blessing of God? Will material success guarantee inner peace and reconciliation with his past? Let's delve deeper into these reflections in the next part. Leave a like and strengthen our community. Jacob's wealth arouses Laban's anger, leading to a new phase of persecution and conflict. The biblical narrative describes a scenario of tension, escape, and strategies to protect the family and acquired goods. Jacob once again demonstrates his ability to be clear-headed and plan, showing his resilience in the midst of a complex and dangerous situation. But the question that echoes is, how far can cunning take us? Does the relentless pursuit of material success and prosperity compensate for suffering and the loss of significant relationships? Jacob's escape from Laban's house and the reconciliation with Esau are crucial moments in his journey. The biblical narrative describes the brothers meeting after years of separation, marked by betrayal, resentment, and fear. Jacob, fearing the worst, approaches cautiously, seeking forgiveness and reconciliation with his brother. But will Esau's forgiveness seal the end of Jacob's journey, or will he still need to face new challenges to find true peace? The answer is in the next part of this journey that continues to explore the complexities of faith and overcoming. Jacob's encounter with God at Peniel marks a turning point in his life. The nocturnal struggle symbolizes inner transformation, the passage from a cunning and calculating man to a man of faith and humility. The biblical narrative describes a physical and spiritual struggle, representing the challenges and suffering that Jacob faced throughout his life. The blessing received after the struggle, a new identity and a new direction, reveals divine mercy, God's ability to transform and restore even those who have erred the most. But what is the impact of this transformation on Jacob's life? How does this experience prepare him for future challenges? Jacob's transformation into Israel represents the change from a man marked by cunning to a man consecrated to God. The biblical narrative describes the change of name as a symbol of the new identity, the new direction that Jacob receives from God. The name Israel means he who wrestles with God, reflecting the spiritual struggle that transformed him. But how will this new identity impact Jacob's relationships with his family and the world? Will he be able to overcome the past and build a future of peace and prosperity? Jacob's life after Peniel is marked by the pursuit of reconciliation and the building of a new family. The biblical narrative reveals the importance of faith and perseverance in overcoming life's challenges. Jacob, now Israel, demonstrates his spiritual maturity, accepting the consequences of his actions and seeking reconciliation with God and the people he has hurt. God's faithfulness, even amidst mistakes and sufferings, is a central theme of this part of the story. But what new challenges still await him on this journey? Jacob's arrival in Canaan and the building of a home mark a new phase in his journey. The biblical narrative describes the building of a family and a community, showing the importance of interpersonal relationships and the pursuit of peace. Material and spiritual prosperity are central themes of this part of the story. But Jacob, now Israel, will need to face new challenges to preserve the legacy of his family and the divine promise. What conflicts and trials are yet to come? Jacob's years in Canaan are marked by prosperity and the challenges of family leadership. The biblical narrative describes the complex relationships between Jacob's sons and the disputes between the tribes. Jacob's figure as patriarch and head of the family is tested in times of crisis. But how will Jacob, now a man of faith and experience, deal with the difficulties and challenges of leadership? Will he be able to ensure the unity and prosperity of his descendants? Jacob's old age is marked by reconciliation with Esau and preparation for death. The biblical narrative describes the handing over of the spiritual inheritance to his sons and the final blessing upon the tribes of Israel. Faith and hope are central themes of this phase of Jacob's life, as he approaches the end of his earthly journey, leaving a legacy of faith and perseverance. But what will be the impact of Jacob's legacy on future generations? How does Jacob's story influence our own spiritual journey? Jacob's death and the transmission of his inheritance to his sons mark the end of a journey full of challenges and overcoming. The biblical narrative describes Jacob's passage to eternity, leaving a lasting legacy for his descendants. Faith, perseverance, and divine mercy are central themes of this part of the story. But how can we apply the teachings of Jacob's life to our own spiritual journey? Jacob's legacy, now Israel, extends beyond his death, impacting the history of God's people. The biblical narrative shows how his descendants became a powerful nation, fulfilling the divine promise made to Abraham. Jacob's story inspires us to persevere in the face of challenges, to trust in God's faithfulness, and to seek reconciliation with the past. How can we be inspired by Jacob's journey to live a life of faith and perseverance? Share your reflections in the comments. Jacob's story is an example of God's mercy and unconditional love. The biblical narrative reveals how God accompanies his children in every step of their journey, even amidst mistakes and weaknesses. Jacob's story is a testimony of perseverance and unwavering faith, even in the face of adversity and suffering. God does not give up on us, and we can trust in his grace and mercy regardless of our mistakes. How do you feel challenged by Jacob's story? Jacob's journey is a metaphor for our own spiritual journey. The biblical narrative shows us that God is with us in every stage of life, even in difficulties and moments of weakness. Jacob's overcoming teaches us to persevere in faith, to trust in God's grace, and to seek reconciliation with him and with others. Jacob's story inspires us to seek a deeper relationship with God, to repent of our mistakes, and to trust in his forgiveness. What lesson do you take from Jacob's story for your own life? The conclusion of Jacob's story leaves us with a message of hope and encouragement. The biblical narrative demonstrates that even amidst our mistakes and failures, God can transform us and use us for his purposes. Jacob's story is a testimony of God's faithfulness, his unconditional love, and his abundant mercy. May this story inspire your walk with God, to seek his face and to trust in his transforming power. God bless you. Share this video with your friends and strengthen our community. Jacob's story teaches us that even amidst darkness, God's mercy remains constant. His struggle for the blessing, although marked by deceptions and betrayals, reveals a patient and loving God, able to transform even the worst choices into opportunities for redemption. But Jacob, despite his tricks, did not escape the consequences of his actions. Life imposed challenges that made him confront his own flaws, leading him to a profound process of spiritual transformation. And it is in this context of repentance and the pursuit of reconciliation that Jacob's testimony gains its strength. May the journey of this patriarch inspire us to seek transformation in our own lives, admitting our mistakes and always seeking the face of a God who has compassion for our weaknesses. Access our website to deepen your knowledge about Jacob's life and see how God can transform your story too. Jacob's journey, marked by clashes with his brother Esau and the struggle for the father's blessing, shows us God's sovereignty even amidst our wrong choices. He is not limited to judging, but to transforming. However much we have strayed from the Lord's paths, he offers us the opportunity to return to him, to seek reconciliation. It is not about minimizing mistakes, but about recognizing them and seeking forgiveness. Jacob's experience at Peniel, where he wrestles with the angel, symbolizes this internal struggle for faith and surrender to the divine will. This struggle is not only physical, but spiritual, a confrontation with one's own conscience and the pursuit of true transformation. From this transformative experience, Jacob begins to live according to the divine will, always seeking to draw closer to the Creator. The mark on his thigh represents this definitive transformation, constantly reminding him of the struggle and the encounter with God. May Jacob's experience inspire your journey of faith and the incessant pursuit of the divine will. Share this video with someone who needs the hope of a life transformed by God.